Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another intriguing young woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi, my name is Candice Smith, and I am from Cleveland, Ohio. That's where I was born and raised, but I am an honorary Floridian because I lived in Florida for many years. I was raised in a family with just my brother and I, and my mother moved quite a bit. We actually lived in California at one point, and we moved to Virginia, where my dad's side of the family is from. And after my parents got divorced, ended up moving back to Ohio. But because I don't like the cold and because I always loved languages, I knew for a fact I didn't want to stay there. I studied French from the time I was 11 years old to the time I was 16 years old. And after that point, when I went to high school, a lot of Spanish-speaking kids started going to my school, and I taught myself Spanish because I was very nosy little girl and very curious. And I always loved people who were different from me. Like, I loved meeting people from all over the world. And if I saw that you were different or you spoke a different language, I wanted to know all about you. So through my journey in learning Spanish, that took me to Miami, Florida, where I went to university. So I attended university at Florida International University, where I did a double major in journalism and Spanish. And that was quite an enlightening experience for me because living in Miami is a very unique experience in the United States. Not a lot of people know this, but in Miami in particular, the population is 90% Hispanic. And then I want to say the other percentage of that is probably mostly people from the Caribbean or other countries. And Americans are actually the minority group or ethnic group in Miami. So it was the first time in my life where I was kind of thrust from a more American type environment to a very international environment. And that helped me to see the world in a brand new way because I had to really speak Spanish. I had to really open my mind and open my heart to learn about other people outside of my culture and outside of what was outside of what I was used to. But I believe that all of my experiences in life really helped me pave this really beautiful international path to where I am now. After leaving Miami, I went to Orlando, Florida, and I was married. I was married for quite a while. I want to say about 15 years or so. And my ex-husband, who has now since passed on, he was from Puerto Rico, and he wanted to move to Puerto Rico. He wanted to move back to his island. So him, my daughter, and I, we moved to Puerto Rico. And that was my very first time living outside of the United States. Although Puerto Rico is a United States territory, it's definitely not the US. And so it was my first time really living outside of the country. And this was really before social media. So I wasn't really able to connect with women the way that I'm able to connect with now. And that experience of living outside of my home country, it was quite difficult. It really was, because of course I was married. There were a lot of cultural expectations that were placed upon me all of a sudden. And I was living in a more remote part of the island. So I didn't have contact with anybody that was, from my culture. And it was a growth experience for sure. We moved back to the States, and I want to say 2 years after that, we ended up getting divorced. And going through that divorce was so emotionally difficult for me, for so many reasons. I mean, uh, in many ways, going through a divorce is like a sort of a death of sorts. And so going through that experience, I needed to find myself again. I needed to find who was Candice outside of being a wife and outside of all of these other things that I held tight to in terms of my identity in that marriage. So I decided to start doing a lot of international travel. So for the first time in my life, I did my very first transatlantic trip, and that was to Paris, France. And that changed my life forever. I specifically remember, pulling up to our Airbnb, after we got on our flight and we took the taxi to our Airbnb and we got settled in our Airbnb. The very first mistake I made was typical American, took too many pieces of luggage and had to carry all the luggage up the stairs. But once we got through that and we settled into our Airbnb, I went out into the terrace, and I was like, wow, the city was so beautiful. And I looked down and I saw people drinking wine and just having a relaxing time at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I knew for a fact, I was like, I found my spirit people. And there was something about the lifestyle and just observing people enjoy life in a unrushed way that changed my spirit. And so when I came back to the States, I was craving that. And so I decided right then and there I was going to do a lot more travel. So I did. And I traveled all over the world, including Ghana, West Africa. And I want to say by 2018, I had made the decision that I was going to live at least part of the year outside the US. So my mom, my daughter, and I, we flew to, and our two dogs, because I had two dogs at the time. We flew to Barcelona, Spain, and we stayed there for 2 months because I just wanted to get a feel of how would it feel like living in another country for an extended period of time. When I came back from Barcelona, I realized like I don't think I would want to live in Barcelona full time. I don't know where that's going to be, but I was open to the idea. Just so happened I had a friend who wanted to go to Rome, Italy. And I'll be honest with you, Rome, Italy was not on my bucket list at all. I said, okay, fine, I'll go with you to Rome. So we go to Rome, we touch down, and I want to say within 2 days of being there in Rome, I turned to my friend and I said, I'm moving here. And she's like, are you serious? I was like, I'm so serious, because Rome captured my heart in a way that I did not even expect. I literally felt like I was falling in love. That was the feeling that I felt just being in the city. And I knew that I had to be there. I had never had an experience in my life where I felt like I needed to be somewhere. So I want to say within about 8 weeks, I had all of my things packed. I had my codici fiscale. I had an apartment. I knew what visa I was going to be there on with my daughter and I. And so I arranged for my dogs. I had my daughter. I had, at that time, I owned a business. I owned a beauty salon with my sister. So I told my sister, I was like, listen, you're going to have to run the salon because I have to be in Rome. And we were in Rome and we stayed there for 2 years. And it was the most beautiful 2 years of my life. And I want to say after the 2 years, I got stuck in Istanbul, Turkey during the COVID lockdown. And during the COVID lockdown, obviously that was very difficult for everyone, but that gave me a lot of time. That gave me a lot of time to just, I think, further discover myself. I was able to write a book during the COVID lockdown. So I wrote a book called The Black Girl's Guide to Living, Loving, and Traveling Abroad. And then I started my two of my businesses during the lockdown.
You have lived many, many, many lives. You're like a cat with so many lives. This is an incredible story. So what was the origin story behind Love Soul Legacy? Tell us a
So
little bit about
So that was one of the businesses that I started. Love Soul Legacy actually started in my mind a while ago, because one thing that a lot of people don't know about Afro-American culture, Black American culture, is that we have a very beautiful tradition of quilting in our culture. And quilting kind of came out of necessity from many of our enslaved ancestors who had to quilt their own blankets to stay warm during the winter months. But of course, one of the beautiful things about my people are that, besides being just extremely resilient, is that we're very creative people. And so the creativity that went into those quilts, they made these beautiful, very beautiful, intricately designed, colorful quilts out of whatever they could find, whatever materials they could find. And actually, if you research Gee's Bend, the women of Gee's Bend, you can actually see some of the quilts that have been passed down from generation to generation. Now, unfortunately, because we are in a more modern time, a lot of the younger women, like my age and younger, just do not have the time to quilt. And I think the interest for quilting has died down. Like, not a lot of young ladies are like, oh, I want to learn how to quilt. So what I decided to do, I said, what would be really interesting is to preserve that history and legacy of quilting and put some of those designs on clothing. So there is a very unique quilting patterns and symbols that we have in our culture from the Underground Railroad. And the Underground Railroad was a system of safe houses and routes for enslaved people in the United States to get to the free states and to Canada. And one of the ways that they used to escape enslavement in the United States was through the quilts. And so this quilting code has various symbols, and each of those symbols told the enslaved people various messages, whether that was to follow the North Star, or whether that was that danger was nearby because slave catchers would be trying to round up slaves who had escaped from the plantations of the South. And so all of these symbols have both historical and spiritual significance in our culture. And so I decided to take those symbols and put them on clothing as a way to preserve our cultural heritage.
that is just so beautiful. Yeah, the
Yes,
first time I read that the quilts were not just quilts, they were actually markers. They were
yes.
signs. They pointed what direction people should run in. It's just incredible what was done there, and with very few resources as well.
Absolutely, because during that time of enslavement, it was illegal for Afro
Mm,
Americans to learn how to read or write. And
wow.
so you had a very high population of people who were illiterate. So one of the best ways to communicate was through these symbols.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
so
That's
it's a very
incredible.
amazing, interesting history.
So, how do you balance fashion, activism, and storytelling all in one brand?
You know what? I think that it it all goes together so well that it
Mm,
really doesn't have to. I really don't feel like I need to create a balance, because it all pulls in together so well. Like I said, I had the ideal in my mind for a while, And I was asking various people, like various seamstresses that I know and textile artists in the States, like, hey, listen, this is a project that I want to put together. And nobody really understood what I meant. They're like, what are you talking about? What is it that you want to do? And in the back of my mind, because I had gone to Ghana, I said, I think I need to pull somebody from the continent that understands the
Oh,
artistry of fabric and textile making. And so I reached out to one of my then social media buddies who grew up in the same neighborhood that I grew up in Cleveland,
mm,
Ohio. And she just so happens to live in Ghana, and her husband is Ghanaian. So when
okay.
I presented her with the idea, she immediately understood what I meant. She was like, we can definitely do this. And so what she did was she spoke to local artisans, and we started working together with the whole storytelling. But I feel
Wow.
like everything came together because you can't have Love Soul Legacy and you can't have these quilt codes without telling the story. It's an intricate part of Black American history and
Mm,
our our story. This is telling our story of resilience and how you have people who were of an enslaved population, and the
mm,
story of how they knew that they were supposed to be free and how they
yeah,
embraced their own humanity and dignity to achieve freedom. And then not only achieve freedom, but you look at post slavery during after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed in
yeah,
1865, you have for those 10 years, you have a group of people who were born free and started businesses and were building wealth. And you even have a Black elite class that was built during that time because people literally changed their literacy rate from being mostly illiterate to being 80% literate within 10 years.
it's so
And that's
crazy.
amazing. So I felt like everything goes hand in hand. And I feel
Yeah,
like it's such a beautiful way to honor our ancestors' experience. And not only that, but twist it in a very modern way where it's very relatable
yeah.
to the younger generations so that they can wear these garments with cultural pride. And not only that, even if you're not Afro American, you can still wear the garments with a sense of knowing. And it's a way for us to share our culture with other people.
Now, people of African descent stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah,
I often wonder the psychological strength you needed to have just to survive those slave ships. For you
exactly.
to show up as you in 2025, the number of people that had to go through brutality, torture, I mean, the worst atrocities anyone can experience. And
Right.
you have that in your DNA. This is what I just absolutely love, and how you're celebrating the ancestors in representing who they are through this brand. So how has your spiritual journey informed your creative business?
It's really interesting because I've always felt that sense of my ancestors being there from a very young age, and the need to honor them and to live my best life um, to make good on the sacrifices that they had to make so that I could be there. I'm one of the few Afro Americans who can actually trace my family roots back to the continent of Africa. So
Oh, wow.
my earliest ancestors on my dad's side of the family arrived
Mm,
in the Americas in Virginia around the 1600s. And they
wow.
immediately escaped slavery. They immediately escaped and they
Oh,
ran off to the mountainous regions of Virginia in the near the Appalachian Mountains, or that's our oral family history. And um, my family comes from a long line of entrepreneurs and um, just really this sense of doing for yourself. So
yes.
for me, it was quite easy to pull that that energy. And I
Yeah.
think this whole journey, it has been a spiritual journey for me because it's helped me to fall in love with being who I am as an African descended person. I think it's made me a lot closer to certain spiritual practices that as African people we have been demonized.
Yeah.
Uh, and just moving away from that because I know that who I am is not inherently bad or evil. So it has been this spiritual journey of just really tapping into that ancestral power that is there. And I think has always been waiting there for me to tap into.
Mm. So, what is the biggest misconception that people have about Black history and fashion?
I think a lot of misconceptions about Black history and fashion is just that there's no luxury.
Hmm.
I think that Black fashion and Black history is not luxurious,
Yeah.
and that you have to, if you want luxury, you have to look towards Europe. And one of the things that I'm seeing and that I want to be a part of with Love Soul Legacy is this really interesting move to the continent for luxury. You have a lot of
Mm.
designers from like Nigeria, especially in Ghana, that are popping up and creating beautiful garments. And I think the new luxury is having things that are sustainably made, having things that were made with love, having items made where you know the artisans, that they weren't used and abused in the process of having whatever it is that you have. That is luxury. And and I think just that we have the talent and the creativity to bring this level of luxury to the world. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception overall. But I think, in particular to my culture, I just think that there's this misconception that we don't have culture in general to
Yeah.
offer or bring. And I think that's one of the reoccurring topics that I hear a lot. Like a lot of times people will say Americans don't have culture, or they
Yeah.
think Black Americans don't have culture. And so one of the things that, or one of the misconceptions that I want to erase is that fact. Like Black Americans, we have culture, not
Mhm.
just the popular culture that you might see in the music or the movies, but we have a richness and a depth to our culture.
I love it. Now, you talked about sustainability playing a part in your mission. Why is it important for us to be conscious and aware of the importance of sustainable fashion in this very moment?
You know what? I think being born a woman and coming forth in this world as a woman, it's my
Mhm.
responsibility to care about the planet. I feel like, mother nature is waiting for her daughters to stand up and care. And
Yeah.
we have, we have to care. If I'm bringing something, if I'm creating something, and that's a beautiful thing about being a woman, being so creative. If I'm creating something and I'm birthing an idea onto the planet, it is my responsibility to make sure that that is good for the planet.
Yeah.
And so for me, sustainability was first and foremost in my mind. So we're not doing mass production of the clothing. I think as human beings, we need to move away from this mindset that we need to be purchasing new clothes all the time and look for things that are going to be quality and last and something
Yeah.
that has meaning. And so I think with this mission of sustainability, working side by side with the artisans, having a relationship with them, uh, just the humanness that goes into it, embracing someone else's humanity, making sure that they're paid fair, livable wages. All of that goes into sustainability, and that we don't have a lot of product waste in the end. So This was extremely important to us for Love Soul Legacy.
I love it. Yeah, we have to take that responsibility and try and leave this planet a better place than we found it.
Exactly.
And we as women are consuming the most too, right? This is the other thing we always have in the back of our minds. We are the biggest consumers of fashion.
Yes.
So it's all about doing it with responsibility. And yeah. So if I could take you back to go and meet the younger you, this is going to be a bit of a thought experiment.
Okay.
Young woman who left home, went to the other side of the world, went into the world of fashion, knowing she had something unique and special, but not sure how to get it out there. If you could go back and give yourself 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
Oh, wow. That's really good. And it's something that I think about from time to time. I would say, one, don't listen to what other people say about you. Have the confidence because you are enough. That's one. The second piece of advice would be trust your intuition. You are a spiritual being and you are tapped in and you are tuned in and you can trust yourself. You can trust those internal feelings when something is telling you that this is not good for you or that it's not bad for you, to trust it and to follow it. And then I think the third piece of advice would be um, to just enjoy life and collect joy. And that this entire experience of being human is to collect joy and just give yourself permission to be happy. I think those are the top 3 pieces of advice that I would tell younger Candice.
I love collect joy. That is so beautiful. We forget that sometimes.
Yes,
We
we
get
do.
so in the wheel, what do they call
We
it?
do. We do. And we don't slow down enough to just feel the happiness and
Yeah.
in the little things, in the very smallest of moments,
What
just
matters.
experiencing the joy.
So if I was to ask you that if you had 10 seconds to describe your brand essence, what would you say?
I would say that Love Soul Legacy is heritage. It's a cultural heritage fabric and clothing line that is centered around honoring Black American experience and history and culture. And it is a story, it is our story woven into fabric. And it's a story that we want to share with the world.
It was so beautiful. My last question is again a thought experiment, but this time teleporting you into the future.
Okay.
And we are going to go and meet the 90-year-old you. She's sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by her children, her grandchildren. Maybe she's on the dance floor. Whoever's going to be with you at the end. If I could teleport you into the future to meet this wise woman who has led you to this point, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
You lived that life. You lived that life, girl. You did it. That's what I would say.
I absolutely love it. You know why I like asking people that question, Candice?
Why?
A lot of women don't realize that the wise woman is already in us.
Yeah.
That she is that quiet voice that says, go left, go right, say yes, say no, advocate, start a business. But we second guess ourselves. We ask everybody else for answers and solutions. But it's in that stillness when the little voice whispers and you hear her, right?
Right.
So I have a game I like to share with people on the podcast that I live and play with the energy of who I am becoming.
Okay.
When I set my goal on creating something and I feel that this is going to be really big, I start talking to her. And sometimes I get stuck. I don't know what to do. And I go into my meditation and my prayers, and I will go to sleep with a very simple question. So, what's the next step?
Mm.
And then you wake up in the morning, you're in the shower, and you have those light bulb moments, and you know exactly what you need to do to execute. Or you're talking to someone about the challenge, and somebody says something, the other person says something. By the end of the day, the week, the month, it comes together like a jigsaw puzzle of solutions. So thank you for trusting your wise woman. She has definitely taken you around the world, given you the most exquisite experiences where some people live in fear and never get to even leave their own home countries.
So
Here you
true.
are living in Spain. It's just incredible.
Yes, so many people, so many people do live in that fear. And I think one of the things that I have always done is when something scares me, or if something comes up that I want to do and it scares me, I just say go for it. Because what I have learned in life is that all the magic, all the beauty in life, all the fun and growth is on the other side of your comfort zone and your fears. And I
Yes.
remember when I left for Rome, I was terrified. I was just like, oh my God, am I making the right choice? This is crazy. You're leaving for Italy with your daughter and your dogs. What is this going to be? And the second that I landed in Rome and got settled in my apartment, I knew I had made the right choice for myself. And I never regretted it since.
Yeah, I feel that failure for me is not having tried.
Yes.
I would rather try something and it fails than to live with the regret that if only I had.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you are so right. Everything you want is on the other side of fear.
Yes. And actually,
So
that's exactly what I told myself. I said, I don't want to be 80 or 90 years old wondering what my life would have looked like if I would have just moved to Italy.
yeah,
That's it.
that's so true. Well, thank you so much for being a source of inspiration. It's an
Thank you so
absolute
much.
honor to have had you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We're a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories to uplift you, to inspire you, to energize you, but most importantly, to take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So if you're scared of traveling, you've heard this amazing story. If you're scared of starting a business, just do it. Trust yourself and just do it. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And Candice, thanks again for the interview.
Thank you.
Bye for now, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.